for me, I think when humans are involved in these kind of issues, don't be surprised that these kind of things can, create legs and, just find themselves where they are not supposed to be. But result sheets are so pivotal to the process of the election, because at the end of the day, if there are no result sheets where you can put the figures, the elections are almost useless. And don't be surprised also that there are three boxes that are supposed to be at every polling unit. In some parts of Lagos, they were replaced, the boxes were not available. People had to use dustbins to serve as ballot boxes.
So
what they do? Do they get paint and start painting them in the different colors?
They just looked for dustbins, and they just put in the result ballots into them. So this kind of situation.
Were they properly labeled?
That's what I mean, because they're color coded, and so I was wondering whether people got paint and actually painted them.
I know that didn't happen. So people just got dustbins, and they were just saying, okay, this is the presidential box, this is the federal, this is the presidential dustbin, this is the Senate dustbin. So this kind of thing, you will want to think that for 4 years we've been planning for this. In the list, result sheets should be the list of the materials that should be unavailable for this election. It's very important.
I also wonder to what extent the availability of resources on time to INEC has an impact on some of these issues that we're currently facing. Because my understanding is that the money due to INEC was not released until just 6 weeks to elections.
Okay,
so questions to ask.
Of course, some PVC is ponder on that question. Ready.
But for now, Sheon, let's take a break. We'll be right back. You're watching Nigeria 2015 live on Channels Television, and of course it's the program on which we are watching, analyzing, discussing, and of course bringing you updates on the Nigeria 2015 elections. Well, just before the breaks we were talking about the issue of late arrival of voting materials, non-arrival in some cases, and of course all that leading to delays in the electoral process. Well, somewhere in the Federal Capital Territory, it's a very unusual situation, which our senior correspondent Paul Nwachukwu will be giving us an update on in just a moment. Well, let's join Paul. Hello, Paul. Well, we'll be trying to re-establish contact with Paul Nwachukwu. We just lost him momentarily. But, well, just before...
Well, basically, maybe we should, when Paul gets to give us some of the information, I've been trying to speak with our guys across the country, giving us an update on what is happening. Just like we had some voting processes leading into late night. Well, we are in the morning already.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It still looks like we're on Saturday, on the election day. It still
looks like Saturday night.
Exactly. So, guys are saying that voting creeps into the second day of election, because now there's going to be election today. And the kind of scenario that is playing out, where you find out that people are bringing out their own generators to power to light up the environment so that INEC officials can conduct voting. People are saying that we must see this voting to the end, like what played out here at Sure Enough, where people had to rent tents for themselves. People brought chairs from themselves. It was like a party situation where people had to bring drinks and food, and people, it was like a ceremony of some sort, and people came together and said, oh, we must vote tonight.
All right, Cheon, we've got Paul back on the line now. Hello, Paul.
Hi, Charles.
Well, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Well, how is it like where you are right now in the Federal Capital Territory?
Well, it's some minutes to 3 a.m. and we'll be moving around to polling units to check for polling units that are yet to complete the election process. And then we stumbled on this particular polling unit in the Abuja metropolis. It's located in a district called Wuye. The voting has just been completed as I speak to you. And the officials are sorting the ballot papers. We understand that the INEC officials arrived on time, but they didn't start accreditation until 10 a.m. The card reader failed, and then they brought another one. That did not help either. And so they resorted to using the manual process. And that was slow, and accreditation ended by 8 p.m. Voting commenced afterwards, and there are actually 600 voters, over 600 voters at this polling unit, and all of them have voted, and they are sorting out the materials. The voters brought out canopies, they brought out chairs, they brought out their generators, they brought lights, and set up some sort of camp in this place, and they're saying that they want to see the end of this process. To show the eagerness of Nigerians who want to see this process to an end.
Well, thank you very much.
The security officials are also on ground.
All right. Thank you very much, Paul, for that very intriguing update. Well, keep an eye on developments there, and probably when everything is concluded, we'll see how it pans out. We certainly will be getting back to you.
Regarding this issue of having over 500 people to a polling booth, I think if you remember, late last year, Professor Jahi tried to increase the number of polling booths in Nigeria, and I suspect part of
the delimitation exercise.
Yes, and part of the reason that I suspect he tried to do that was to try and reduce the number of people, because in some places, like my polling booth, there were only 131 people. So it's great for us because we get to vote very quickly, we get accredited, and we get counted. In other places, there are places apparently that have over 1,000 people. So you can imagine the nightmare of trying to accredit 1,000 people and then get them to vote afterwards, because it's not one seamless process. First you accredit, then you vote. And so these are the sort of things that you would hope that going forward will be allowed to happen, so that they sort of ease the process of voting for Nigerians.
Earlier on, we saw that situation that Paul Nwachukwu reported in the FCT. Now, he said the voting materials did arrive early, but then voting continued into the wee hours of the morning. So I'm wondering, is it as a result of the population of the voters? Because he said it was due to some reason which he did not necessarily expatiate upon, but then I'm wondering whether
it's probably not one thing.
As a result,
you know how
of the
it is with things like this. It's probably a mixture of different things.
Yeah.
But the truth is, if you have a failure of card readers and you have 130 people, and then you have a failure of card readers and you have 1,000 people, whether you like it or not, the booth that the polling unit that has like 130 people will get to sort its problem out a little bit earlier than the one that has 1,000 people.
Don't forget that there are two basic things and very important things that were introduced by INEC into this process, which added 1 hour to the accreditation exercise. Before we had, accreditation exercise ended at 12:30, And now when the issue of PVCs were introduced, one, the card readers are introduced too. And card reader was a major challenge in this particular process. So card reader, for me, was a major pitfall of this process, because basically it was the major thing that caused a lot of problems and delay, because manual, from some of the places that we saw, when they resulted into manual, it became a faster process.
But when you say a pitfall, isn't it true though that the reasons they introduced the card readers was to minimize fraud?
Not to minimize fraud, but not to reduce the time. It actually added to the process.
And so it was a question of weighing
which devil, which evil would you rather prefer?
Actually, I personally, I was actually a bit skeptical about the efficacy of the use of the card readers. Remember, it operates almost on the same principle as our mobile phones. You know, sometimes we have network failure. Sometimes we have, some of your network not just coming, not turning up at all.
In the case of the card readers, the only time that you need network to be on the card reader is when it's sending information onto the database, because they are embedded chips on the card readers. So what it naturally needs to do is to read the card, the PVC, and afterwards you have it's just something similar to the
POS terminal.
The POS
Absolutely.
machines.
But those are the things I considered. The POS terminal, the mobile phone. Whatever has to read a microchip, whether it's on a SIM card, whether it's on a PVC. But of course, we always have systemic issues with these areas of technology. And then this is a new thing. It's a new innovation. At the risk of sounding tautological and not properly tested as far as, a real election situation is concerned.
Can I please ask that we remember these failures? We've still not been able to quantify them.
Yeah.
So we're still really not sure of the size of the failures.
But Kadira, Kadira, you remember that the demonstration, the public demonstration, the success rate was not in the 60s. It was in the 50. It wasn't beyond
more
52.
than half.
More than half. For 12 states, we needed more than half, way more than half, to convince us that we can actually go ahead. But we have gone into it, no problem. But one thing that comes to mind is the fact that if we are going into an election like this, places like the FCT, places like Lagos, places like Kano, places like Rivers, these are core places in the country where the metropolitan, in all sense of it. So I believe that INEC should make some careful and extra effort to make sure that there are more population, there are more voters in these places, and there should be more attention paid to get things working better in these places than in some other places. So it brings to a question the fact that, look, if things are not working in these places where so-called metropolitan cities or communities, then just imagine what will happen in rural areas or places that are less advanced in some sense.
Well, we can go on and on and on and on about these, the issue of, whether the card readers or the technology is working or not. But, let's just accept the fact that it's a work in progress, and maybe when we return after the news, we will be looking at maybe the human factor, the security issues, and, of course, maybe more reports from our correspondents out in the field, because, yes, many of them are still very much out there waiting to find out what the outcome of some of these electoral processes are concerned. But that's how it has been on this segment of Nigeria 2015. Well, it's not over yet. The new yet is, a new day is about to begin, and the news will be coming up.
It's about to
in
begin.
a couple of
a new day is already. You're several hours into the new day.
Several hours into
You're
the new day,
losing,
so to say.
He's been
Excuse
here
me,
so long.
Kayode.
Yes, also
Losing
he's
count of
losing,
time.
Sometimes
he's
we
losing
talk-
sense
I
of
mean,
timing already.
Well, that was a slip of tongue. Don't take advantage of that. But anyway, the newscaster Kayode Alayonde is standing by to bring us the news. Of course, it's always new, hot, and fresh. And thereafter, we'll be right back to continue with the discussions on Nigeria 2015.